We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 15a. On the previous summit, Rabbi Bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said that if you have a lav, if you have a negative commandment that is kidmo aseh, that's preceded by an aseh, it's not a lav hanitikal aseh, but it's a lav shekidmo aseh. So in such a situation, you will get malchus if you violate that lav. And the Gemara says, Amru lo, so they said to him, Amrit, meaning they said to Rabbi Yochanan, did you really say that? Amar lu, he said to them, lo, he said, no, I didn't say that. Amar Rabba, so then Rabba said, Elokim Amra, by God he did say it. Uchsiva utanin, it's also written in the pasuk and it's learned in the Mishnah. And he explains as follows, Ksiva, where is it written? As follows, it's written, V'yishalchu min hamachane, it says you're going to send them out of the machane. This is talking about the Tameh people, let's say a Tsarua, somebody who has Saras, or let's say a Zav, or a Tameh Lanefesh. It says you send them out of the camp, that's already Kidmo Aseh, that's preceded by an Aseh. And then it says, V'lo yitamu es machaneim, and then it says that they shouldn't be metame their camp. And Tanina, and we learned in the Mishnah, Habola Mikdash Tameh, that somebody who enters the Beis HaMikdash when he is Tameh, so he is going to be liable to get Malchus in that case. So there you have a case of a Lav Shekidmo Aseh, the Aseh is preceding the Lav, but we're still saying that in such a situation you do get Malchus. And so therefore Rabbi Bar Chana says, in fact, Rabbi Yochanan not only said it, but it's clear from the Mishnah. And so the Gemara continues, Elamai Taima Kahadrbe, but if that's the case, so why is it that Rabbi Yochanan was retracting? Why did he say, or why did he seem to suggest that it's not true? And the Gemara says, Mishum Dekasha Le'ones, the reason why he was retracting is because he had a difficulty from the case of ones, that is a difficulty from the case of rape. The Tanya, because we learned in a Braisa, Ones shagiresh, the halacha by somebody who is ma'anes, a woman, if somebody rapes a woman, so he's supposed to marry that woman. It says he marries that woman and he can't send her away. He can't divorce her, kol yamav. He can't divorce her all of his days. And so it says over here in this brisa that if somebody rapes a woman and shagiresh, and then he divorces the woman, so im Yisrael, so if he's a Yisrael and he's able to marry a divorcee, so then machzir ve'eno loka, so then he should return her to him, meaning he should remarry her, and he will not get malchus. And im kohen, who now, if he's a Kohen, so then he's not able to remarry her because he can't marry a divorcee. So then Loka ve'eno machzer. So then he will get Malchus and he will not return her. And so the question is as follows. It says here again, Im Yisrael hu machzer ve'eno loka. If he's Yisrael, so he just remarries her and he gets out of Malchus. So, but why is that true? Amai, why should that be true? Lo saseh shekid moaseyu. Isn't that exactly a case of a lo saseh shekid moaseh? That is a negative commandment, and it's preceded by a positive commandment, because really you're supposed to marry beforehand. The marrying of the woman is not you only do after you divorce her. It's something you're supposed to do right away after the rape. And so therefore, this is a case of a lo saseh shekid moaseh, and Rabbi Yochanan therefore was retracting, because he said if he was correct that lo saseh shekid moaseh gets malchus vililki, so there really should be malchus over here. Rather, it seems to indicate that there's no malchus by a lo saseh shekid moaseh. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Ula says, really what Rabbi Yochanan said is correct. By a lo saseh shekid moaseh, really there should be malchus. Now, why isn't there malchus in the situation of rape? Because lo yomar lo si ali isha bonus. Because really, it didn't need to say lo si ali isha by onus at all. By rape, it did not need to say that he has to marry her, because really we would have learned that out anyway. So it's an extra phrase. So in this particular case where it's an extra phrase, it's saying that if you do the positive commandment after you divorce her, you get out of malchus. But that's only true in this situation. Again, Ula is saying it doesn't need to say lo si ali isha by ones, because v'ligmar mi motzi shemra, we could just learn it from motzi shemra. Motzi shemra, again, is a person who lies about the woman that he marries. He says she was not a basula, she was not a virgin. And so over there also, the halach is the same, that the motzi shemra has to marry this woman. And so umam motzi shemra, if by a motzi shemra, shalo asa maisa, he didn't do any action. It's not like a situation of rape, where the person did an action and raped the woman. Here it's just something that he spoke. But Amar Achmana, but the Torah says v'lo si ali isha, that to him she has to be a wife, he has to marry her. So ones lo kol shekain. So when it comes to ones, isn't it all the more so that he has to marry her? And so therefore, why does it even need to say lo si ali isha by ones? And we say as follows: Imeino inyan lefanav. If we don't need it for beforehand, meaning to say right away beforehand, we know that he's supposed to marry her. So teneyu inyan la'achar. It must be after the fact, meaning if he divorces her, it's saying then instead of getting malchus, he should just remarry her. Shem giresh yachzed, that if he divorces her, he should remarry her. And that's Ula's answer. That's why this particular case is an exception, and there's no malchus. But really, Rabbi Yochanan's initial halacha was correct. A lo saseh shekid moaseh does in fact get malchus. But the Gemara continues and asks, Vakati, but still, Ones mimotzi shemra lo gamar. This answer of Ula is not good because you cannot learn Ones from motzi shemra. Deikal mifrach, because we can refute it as follows. Ma'ala motzi shemra shekein loko mishale. Motzi shemra is unique because there's a punishment of malchus and also the person has to pay, and so therefore you can't learn out to a case of Ones where you don't have that. So rather lo yomar lo siyel isha b'motzi shemra. We can actually go the other direction. Don't say lo siyel isha by motzi shemra. V'ligmar me'ones. We can learn from Ones. Uma ones she'eno loka mishalim. If by Ones where we don't have loka mishalim, he doesn't get malchus and pay. But Amar Achmana, but the Torah says velosi al isha that he has to marry the woman. So motzi shemra by motzi shemra where it is loka mishalim, lo kol shekain certainly. So it doesn't even need to say it. V'lo manamar. Why does it say it by motzi shemra? Emeinu inyan lemotzi shemra. If you don't need it for motzi shemra, tenei inyan laones, and then you can apply it by Ones. And again, we already know it by Ones. Emeinu inyan lefanav. If you don't need it by Ones lefanav, tenei inyan laachrav, then apply it after the fact. And again, that's how we know that by Ones he should just remarry her and he will not get malchus. But the Gemara continues and asks, so Motzi Shemra Mayonis Nami Lo Gamar. Still, Motzi Shemra you can't learn from Ones either. Dikal Mifrach, because you can refute that as well. Mala Ones Shekain Asamaisa, because Ones, there at least it was an action. And so therefore you can't learn to Motzi Shemra, where it was just a Dibra was just speaking. And so instead the Gemara says, Ela Lo Yomar Lo Siel Isha B'Motzi Shemra. Rather, you don't need to say Lo Siel Isha by Motzi Shemra. Why? Sharei Ishtohi, because it's already his wife in that case. That was already the situation. So Lo Manemar, so why does it have to say Lo Siel Isha? And if we don't need it for Motzi Shemra, Tenei Inyan Lo, so then we can apply it by Ones. And again, V'meinu Inyan Lefanav, we don't need it for beforehand, Tenei Inyan Liacharav, so then you should apply it afterwards. And again, that's why specifically by Ones we say that there is no malchus. But the Gemara continues, Ve'ema, but still, why not say V'meinu Inyan Lefanav de Motzi Shemra, Tenei Inyan Liacharav Didei de Lo Lucky? Maybe we should apply it to Motzi Shemra and say if we don't need it beforehand by Motzi Shemra because he's already married to her, then say we'll apply it to La'acharav by Motzi Shemra and say by Motzi Shemra is the place where you're not going to get malchus. And the Gemara says, fine, inochinami, indeed that might be correct. V'yasi Ones v'gamar minei, and then we'll learn Ones from there. We'll learn again that there is no malchus. But the Gemara still continues and asks, but my Gomer Minei, but still, even if you're going to say that by Motzi Shemra, how can you learn Ones from Motzi Shemra? Ibe Kal V'chomer, if we're going to make a Kal V'chomer, Ibe Ma'motzino, you're going to make some kind of Ma'motzino, just like we find over there, so too over here. Ikla Mifrach, we already said there's all kinds of refutation, so therefore you can't learn it out anyway. Ma'ala Motzi Shemra, Shekein Lo Asamais, because we're going to say that Motzi Shemra there was no action, and here there's an action, you always have some kind of refutation. And so the Gemara instead says, Elo Amar Rava, rather Rava says, the real reason why Ones is different, and we say that by Ones there is no malchus, and he just remarries her when he divorces her, is because Kol Yomav Ba'amod V'Hachzir. Because again it said, Lo Yuchal L'Shalcha Kol Yomav. He can't send her away all of his days, and we understand from that Kol Yomav, all of his days, he's supposed to continuously remarry her, and specifically from that phrase, that's why we understand there's no malchus. It applies even after he violates the law. Even after when he divorces her, he's supposed to return, he's supposed to remarry her. And the Gemara continues, V'chein ki yasa Ravan amar Rabbi Yochanan. Similarly, when Ravan came, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Kol Yamav ba'amod v'hachzer. All of his days, he's supposed to continuously remarry her, should he violate the law and should he divorce her. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Papa le Rava. Rav Papa said to Rava, V'holodami lave lelav dechasima. But in general, when it comes to a lav shekidmo aseh, we know that in order to get malchus, the lav, the negative commandment, has to be similar to the lav dechasima. That's the prototypical case of a lav that gets malchus. That's talking about the negative commandment in terms of muzzling one's animal. And that's not similar in the lav dechasima. That's not a lav shekidmo aseh. This is a lav shekidmo aseh. So in general, how does Rabbi Yochanan say that a lav shekidmo aseh gets malchus? And the Gemara says, he said back to him, Mishum the Kosav Beirachmona, Asay Yisera Migragar. What do you think? Just because there's some extra say, that makes it any worse? That doesn't make it any worse. It really still is similar to the Lav de Chasima. But the Gemara says, if so, Lav Shanitak Lasei Nami. If you're going to make that argument, by a Lav Shanitak Lasei, also we could say the same thing. Leima Mishum, the Kosav Beirachmona, Asay Yisera Migragar, we should say, just because the Torah has an extra say, that makes it a Lav any worse. But yet we do say, by a Lav Shanitak Lasei, that there's no Malchus. Amarle, but he said back to him, Ahulin and Tuke Lav Hudasa. There, the entire assay is in order to sever the negative commandment and to say that we're not going to say by the negative commandment that there's malchus. That's different. That's nothing similar. That's not similar at all, rather, to a lav shekidmo assay. But the Gemara continues, Hanichol amanda amar bitlo velo bitlo. All of this works out according to the one who says bitlo velo bitlo. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Elo amanda amar kimo velo kimo. But according to the one who says kimo velo kimo, ma'ikol amemar, what are you going to say? And Rashi explains, Hanicha leman detani bitlo velo bitlo, el leman detani kaimo velo kaimo ma'ikol ameimar, meaning, Hadi yamard kol yomav ba'amod v'hachzer koi. The answer we just gave before is that when it comes to the situation of ones, so all of his days he's supposed to continuously remarry her, and asiso lav shenitik lasei, and we're essentially rendering this into a lav shenitik asei, v'harchavas v'rchavza lo zman l'kiyum hasei kol yomav, and you're really saying that he has all of his life to do this asei, because that's basically how we're understanding when we're saying, we're learning it from kol yomav, that it's all of his days, so apparently he has his whole life to do this asei, and that's how he avoids the malchus, that's how he avoids getting lashes. But if you're going to say that v'lid varech, according to you, according to that answer, hadatanya machzir ve'eno loka, when it says he can remarry her and not get malchus, liolam kamer, that means forever. He has the rest of his life to remarry her. Kol zman sheyachol omar ani machzir, as long as he can say that I'm going to remarry, ein bezin malkin oso. Apparently we're saying that bezin won't give malchus. So hanichol aman detani l'kamon belav hanitak lasei, that only works according to the one who learns later on by lav hanitak lasei, that bittul eso asei chayiv, that only if he nullifies the asei, he makes it impossible to do the asei, is he chayiv al halav, then he's chayiv on the lav, and then we say that he gets malchus, and lo bittul asei, but as long as he hasn't nullified the positive commandment, as long as it's still possible, so then he's potter, he doesn't get malchus. That would work according to bitlo v'lo bitlo. Shahalav tali bebittul hasei, the point is the lav is dependent on nullifying the possibility of doing the asei. Ve'eno nigmar at shivatel eso asei biyadayim, it's not completed, so to speak. He hasn't fully done the lav until he nullifies the asay actively, bittul olam, a full bittul. Shalo yuchal eskaimo, that he couldn't do it, he couldn't fulfill it any longer. And so then Rashi continues, we can say, Kol Yoma v'yesh lo takona b'chazor, that all of the days of his life, for the rest of his life, he can fix this by remarrying her, shein mevatel as asay, because as long as he doesn't nullify the asay, elim ken mediru shelo tehenna mimenu, neder shein lo hafar kedel kamon. The only way he'd be mevatel the asay is if he literally makes a neder, he takes an oath that she's not going to get any benefit from him anymore. So then he already took an oath, it's impossible for him to remarry her, but other than that, he'll be able to remarry her at some point in the future, and therefore there's no malchus. But according to the one who says you have to right away fulfill the asay in order to be pater malchus, and if you don't do that, you're chayiv. That the asay fixes the lav. It's not dependent upon nullifying the asay. The moment you do the lav has been completed. And then you have to do the asay in order to uproot the malchus. And therefore, when he comes to bezin, either he does the asay, and then he'll be exempt, or yilka, or he gets malchus. So then you can't use the answer we gave above for the case of ones. You can't say his whole life he's ba'amod v'achzir, like you said. That if he doesn't return her, then immediately he'll get malchus. Because apparently you're not able to say he should fulfill it later. Because if so, he hasn't. How are you going to have a situation where for the rest of his life he can say I can do it? That doesn't work according to the one who says kaimo v'lo kaimo. That's the question of the Gemara on this answer, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tesvav Amud Beis.